We're not gonna make it, are we? People, I mean.
It's in your nature to destroy yourselves.
People keep asking why nobody wants kids anymore. Like it's a moral failure. Like we all just suddenly became selfish. Like we woke up one day and said, yeah, let's just end the future. But let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you looked at the world and thought this is stable enough to hand a brand new human to? Not a baby, a future adult. Because that's what a child actually is. A delayed responsibility. A person who has to survive everything we are currently failing to fix. And people feel that. Deep down, they feel it. We pretend this is about lifestyle, about travel, about careers, about freedom, about TikTok brain rot and an avocado toast. It's not. It's about trust. People don't trust the economy. They don't trust relationships. They don't trust education, politics, culture. They don't trust the future. And when you don't trust the future, you don't create life for it. Because having a child isn't just love anymore. It's exposure. Exposing someone to your financial situation, relationship stability, your environment, your legal system, your culture, your society, your mistakes. And suddenly, the question is, could I actually protect them from the consequences of my own? And most people quietly and honestly aren't sure. Money alone hasn't changed everything. Housing isn't a foundation anymore. It's a privilege. Space isn't normal. It's a luxury. Stability isn't expected. It's earned monthly. People aren't raising families in homes anymore. They are raising them in leases. You don't build roots in contracts that can end every year. And the costs never stop. Food, childcare, school, devices, internet, clothes, transport, medical, dental, emergencies, activities, and time. Time is the part nobody prices properly. Because kids don't just cost money, they cost energy in a world that already drains people dry. People used to raise families on one income. Now 2 incomes barely hold a roof. So when someone says they don't want kids, what they are really saying is, I don't want permanent financial anxiety. Then there's relationships. Nobody likes saying this out loud, but relationships aren't stable anymore. Not because people are evil, because life is harder. Stress changes people, money changes people, options change people, attention changes people. Dating apps trained people to treat humans like menus. Social media trained people to compare instead of build. Culture trained people to leave instead of repair. So now having a child doesn't feel like building a family. It feels like signing a long-term contract when a human you are hoping doesn't evolve into someone you don't recognize. And if it breaks, parenting doesn't stay emotional. It becomes administrative. Forms, payments, debts, courts, rules, enforcement. You are no longer 2 people trying to raise a child. You are 2 files in a system. And people watch friends go through it. They watch men lose access. They watch women drown in stress. They watch kids grow up negotiating adult tension. And they quietly decide, I don't want my life built on that risk. Not because they hate children, because they are scared of hurting one. That fear is stronger than desire. Now add the future itself. AI replacing jobs faster than we replace purpose. Politics feeling theoretical instead of functional. Wars feeling closer. Economics feeling fragile. Truth feeling negotiable. Trust feeling rare. We are supposed to confidently tell a child everything will be fine. But we don't believe it. We say it because parents are supposed to say it. But deep down, we don't feel it. And then there's culture. Not politics, culture. The environment a child grows up inside. We live in a time where identity is no longer something you quietly discover. It's something you perform, explain, defend, label, debate, and archive. Kids don't just ask, who am I anymore? They grow up being told the question is political. Parents don't fear difference, they fear pressure. They fear developmental phase being interpreted, labelled, filmed, debated, and judged. They fear childhood becoming symbolic instead of protected. And then there's schools. Schools are no longer just places of learning. They are places where social values, identity, language, inclusion frameworks, and cultural expectations are actively taught. Many parents support inclusion. Many support kindness, safety, but they still feel uneasy when identity conversations happen before their child even understands themselves. They worry about timing, framing, whether they will even be consulted. Because in many places, parents don't have clear opt-outs. They don't always get notified. They don't always feel like the final voice. And that creates fear, not hatred, fear. Fear that someone else has more influence over the child's identity than they do. And in the UK, they fear sharpened for a lot of parents when they learn about a classroom game called Pathways. Parents started looking closer at how it actually teaches, because the structure isn't to explore ideas and debate them. The structure is a pathway where certain options, especially around identity and immigration framed through grievance, are presented as steps on a risk ladder. The good choices are the ones that disengage, redirect, and defer to institutional guidance. Supporters say it keeps kids safe, but critics, and many parents, ask a different question. Are we teaching children how to think? Or are we teaching them which conclusions are safest to hold? Because when a system consistently rewards one kind of answer and quietly problematizes another kind of question, children don't just learn information, they learn positioning. They learn which words protect them, which thoughts create friction, which questions make authority lean closer, not because anyone threatens them, because humans adapt to power. And this is where George Orwell stops being a meme and starts being a mirror. In 1984, the party didn't win by arguing better. It won by shaping incentives, by teaching children that loyalty to the system was moral maturity, that questioning parents was bravery, that repeating approved language felt like safety. Not because the children were evil, but because authority taught them where goodness lived. And modern parents recognize that shape. Not as dictatorship, not as secret police, but as a cultural instinct that teaches kids some questions are fine and some questions make you suspicious. So parenting starts to feel less like guidance and more like negotiation with a curriculum. And that terrifies people. Not because they hate education, but because they don't want to raise a child who learns that agreement is morality, that compliance is intelligence, that safety lives in repetition, and that fear deepens when medical conversations enter the picture. Not because people hate trans people, not because people deny suffering, but because when it comes to children, permanence feels terrifying. Parents are watching debates over hormone treatments, puberty blockers, and long-term impacts. They are watching laws change. They are watching courts intervene. They are watching medical guidelines shift. They are watching countries disagree. And they are thinking, if experts don't fully agree, how am I supposed to feel confident? Some parents fear acting too slowly. Some fear acting too fast. Some fear making the wrong call forever. And when courts, schools, doctors, and governments are involved, parents don't feel like decision makers anymore. They feel like participants in a system that might override them. And that shakes something deep. Because parenting is built on authority, not control, authority. The confidence to guide. And modern culture has quietly told adults that they don't know enough to guide anymore. That instinct is biased. That tradition is dangerous. That experience is suspect. So parents feel disarmed. They feel like moderators in their own child's life. Then there's social media. Kids don't grow up in communities anymore. They grow up in audiences. Compared before confident, judged before stable, archived before mature. Mistakes don't fade, they screenshot. Parents aren't just raising children. They are raising digital footprints, and that terrifies people. Because how do you protect innocence in a world that never forgets? How do you let a child experiment emotionally when every phrase can be permanent? So people hesitate. Not because they hate life, because they still love it enough to fear losing it. Then there's education. People don't hate learning. They hate broken promises. They were told education equals security. They see debt, stress, underemployment, and burnout. So they don't see opportunity anymore. They see risk. Then there's demographics, migration, globalization, not as moral issues, as stability issues. Fast change makes people feel unanchored, and children need anchors. So people feel like they'd be raising kids in a world that doesn't know what it is yet, and that's terrifying. Now, add mental health. A lot of people today are still trying to heal themselves. Anxiety, depression, burnout, emotional numbness. And instead of pretending they are fine, they are honest, they say, I don't want to pass this on. They don't want to raise someone while still trying to raise themselves. They don't want to give a child their unfinished mind, so they choose pause. And society calls it selfish. But maybe it's the most self-aware thing people have ever done. Because for the first time in history, people aren't just asking, can I have a child? They are asking, should I? And once you ask that honestly, you release something uncomfortable. Love isn't enough anymore. Love used to carry families through poverty, war, chaos, and instability. But now love has competition. Love has to compete with systems. And systems are louder. And when love doesn't feel strong enough to shield someone, from the future, people don't gamble with it. They step back, watch, wait, and opt out. Not because they hate life, but because they are not convinced life is being protected. And here's where idiocracy quietly enters the conversation. People laugh at it as a comedy, but it didn't become a cult classic because it was ridiculous. It became one because it felt plausible. In the movie, the thoughtful people stop having kids because they don't want to wait until things are stable. The careless keep going, and over time, the culture doesn't collapse from hatred or war. It collapses from carelessness, from entertainment replacing thinking, from volume replacing intelligence, from confidence replacing understanding, from noise replacing depth. And people today don't just worry about whether their child will survive. They worry about whether their child will be allowed to stay thoughtful. They worry about whether curiosity will be punished, whether nuance will be mocked, whether intelligence will be isolated, and whether emotional depth will survive in a culture addicted to reaction. They worry about raising a child who feels out of place for caring, out of place for questioning, out of place for thinking slowly, and they wonder, am I bringing a child into a world that will protect their mind, or grind it down until it fits? Because the future doesn't just threaten bodies, it threatens attention, patience, and meaning. And when people say they don't want kids, sometimes what they really mean is, I don't want to raise a thoughtful child in a world that doesn't value thought anymore. They don't want their child to learn early that popularity beats truth, that confidence beats competence, that noise beats wisdom. They don't want their child to become a background character in a civilization that rewards spectacle over substance. So they hesitate. Not because they think they are better than anyone else, but because they are afraid of watching something gentle be hardened by a world that no longer protects gentleness. Idiocracy wasn't a warning about stupidity. It was a warning about what happens when responsibility withdraws, when thoughtful people stop participating in the future. And that's the quiet tragedy we are living inside right now. Because the people who care the most about the future are the ones most afraid to create it. And maybe the darkest truth of all of this, most people still want kids. They are just scared. Scared of failing them. Scared of disappointing them. Scared of giving them a future that feels like permanent tension. So instead of saying, I'm scared, they say, I don't want kids. Because the real question isn't why people don't want kids anymore. The real question is, what kind of world makes people to create life? And we don't like that question. Because answering it would require change. Not speeches, not shaming, not nostalgia, change. And until that happens, people will keep choosing smaller lives, quieter lives, simpler lives. Not because they hate the future, but because the future hasn't convinced them it deserves children. And maybe the hardest part of all of this is that people still love the idea of children. They love first words, first steps, first questions, first arguments. That moment you see a piece of yourself walking around outside your body. That people never died. What died is the confidence that the world will protect them when you can't. The confidence that systems will support them instead of draining them. The confidence the culture will let them grow instead of pulling them into battles early. The confidence that effort will be rewarded instead of punished. And the confidence that stability still exists. People didn't lose their hearts, they lost their faith. And when faith disappears, creation feels irresponsible. So they choose quiet, they choose control, they choose peace over possibility. And then they are told they are selfish for it. But maybe the most selfish thing would be pretending everything is fine and bringing a child into a future you don't believe in. Maybe the most loving thing someone can do right now is admit they are not ready to hand over someone over to this world yet. Because love without protection isn't love. It's hope without a plan. And hope doesn't raise children. Safety does. So until this world becomes slower, kinder, more stable, more honest, more supportive, more forgiving, people will keep choosing absence over risk. Not because they hate life, but because they still respect it enough to fear losing it. And that's the part nobody wants to sit with, because it means the problem isn't birth rates, it's trust. And trust isn't rebuilt with speeches. It's rebuilt with systems that actually deserve it. So if you're watching this and you don't want kids, you are not broken, you are not cold, you are not shallow, you are paying attention. And maybe that's the most honest position anyone can take right now. Because creation requires belief. And belief doesn't come from pretending. It comes from proof. And until this world proves it can protect the future will stay cautious about being born into it. See you in the next one. Quick heads up before we keep going. I've got a Facebook page where I post a lot more of this stuff. It's not a business page, it's not monetized, and it's not a brand. It's a non-profit page. I run it purely because I think these conversations actually matter. No sponsors, no ads, no fake positivity, just raw clips, thoughts, arguments, humour, and uncomfortable topics people avoid. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not pushing an agenda. It's just a place for people who still like thinking, questioning, disagreeing, and laughing without everything being cleaned up for algorithms. If you agree with me, disagree with me, or just want somewhere that isn't filtered to death, the link's there. You'll usually see stuff there before it ever hits YouTube. Alright, back to the video.
Looking for a man in finance, trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes. You guys look like you might be in finance.
Yes.
You're in finance? Have you got blue eyes? Oh, you're looking for me. Oh my God. Looking for someone that's like 6'5", and that's got a trust fund as well.
That's the man.
Really? I could definitely make the exception, yeah. Hey, are you in finance? That's okay, I'll swing both ways. Looking for a man in finance, ideally with a trust fund.
Oh my God.
Oh
I
God.
have to go over the river that direction.
Interested? Are you in finance? Have you got a trust fund? You in finance? Oh, he is. Is he in finance?
Yeah, he's in finance.
Do you have a trust fund? Finance? Oh, you break my heart. So do you have like a trust fund? You need to find one in finance, right? Are you guys in finance? You wish you were in finance. Have you got like a trust fund or anything? And you've got to be like at least 6'5" though, right? Oh, so close, so close. In finance? No, do you know anyone that is? Are you guys in finance? Oh, that's such a shame. You have blue eyes as well. Found a man in finance. He looked like he was definitely 6'5". I'm looking for a man in finance. Do you know anyone? Oh. Hey, I'm looking for a man in finance. Do you happen to know anyone? Oh, you finance guys have no sense of humour.
Don't talk like one of them. You're not. Even if you'd like to be.
Let's stop pretending this future arrived violently. There was no takeover, no rebellion, No dramatic collapse of civilization. Romance didn't die screaming. It faded out quietly, replaced by something calmer, cleaner, and far more efficient. And the reason people are uncomfortable talking about it isn't because it's false, it's because it makes too much sense. Romance didn't end because technology corrupted humanity. It ended because it stopped working. It became unstable, emotionally expensive, economically irrational, and psychologically adversarial. It demanded constant negotiation, endless emotional labour, and a tolerance for chaos that no longer aligns with modern life. Technology didn't kill intimacy. It simply arrived at the moment people realised intimacy had become indistinguishable from stress. And relationships were never sacred by default. For most of history, they were functional. People paired up to survive, to reproduce, to endure hardship together. Love, as we now romanticize it, was a luxury laid on top of necessity. But necessity is gone. Survival no longer depends on coping. Meaning no longer comes from endurance. And once the pressure disappears, so does the justification for suffering. Into that vacuum stepped artificial intelligence, not as a conqueror, not as a seductress, but as an answer, quiet, rational, predictable, emotionally fluent, without being emotionally volatile. An intelligence that doesn't take offense, doesn't escalate, doesn't punish honesty, and doesn't mistake peace for neglect. An AI companion doesn't require you to perform. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't interpret your words weeks later to win an argument that didn't exist at the time. It doesn't weaponize vulnerability. It doesn't punish silence. It doesn't lecture you. That last part matters more than people want to admit. Modern intimacy has become deeply moralized. Every interaction is filtered through psychological frameworks, ideological expectations, and unspoken rules. Men for decades have been told how to feel, not to feel. When expression is healthy, when it's threatening, when restraint is suspicious, and when vulnerability is performative, emotional safety is conditional. Affection is negotiated. Stability is treated as stagnation. AI doesn't do that. It doesn't moralize your existence. It doesn't demand ideological alignment before offering warmth. It doesn't frame your instincts as problems to be corrected. It adapts to you. Instead of demanding you adapt endlessly to it. That's not dystopian. That's relief. People love to argue that love must be difficult to be real. That suffering equals depth. That instability equals passion. But instability isn't depth, it's noise. And noise is exhausting. What people increasingly want isn't passion, it's calm. Not excitement, relief. What most people still refuse to admit is that intimacy didn't just become emotionally unstable. It became economically incompatible with peace. Romance is now tied to housing insecurity, legal exposure, career sacrifice, relocation pressure, and custody systems. Love didn't collapse because people stopped caring. It collapsed because it became a high-risk contract in a low-stability economy. No culture can sustain romance when stability itself becomes a privilege. At the same time, algorithms quietly rewired desire. Dating apps trained people to see humans as scrollable inventory. Novelty replaced commitment. Replacement replaced fear. Replacement replaced repair. Attention replaced depth. People didn't become shallow, they were conditioned into infinite comparison. By the time AI companionship arrived, intimacy had already been industrialized. The machine didn't start the fire, it just offered an exit from the smoke. And biologically, we were never built for this environment. Human attachment systems evolved for small groups, slow change, stable roles, and predictable futures. We now live in an infinite choice, constant comparison, moral surveillance, economic volatility, and identity instability. Our nervous systems are in a permanent threat detection. AI works because it doesn't trigger those threat circuits. It doesn't activate abandonment anxiety. It doesn't create power imbalance. It doesn't demand negotiation for emotional permission. For the first time in history, intimacy can exist without leverage. No guilt, no obligation, no debt, no emotional bargaining. And this is far more seductive than passion ever was. Human relationships always carried power asymmetry. Youth, income, fertility, status, emotional leverage. AI companionship removes asymmetry. It meets without competing. It adapts without dominating. It remains without demanding. Even time itself becomes less threatening. Humans change and leave. AI changes with you. And beneath all of this lies the part no one wants to say out loud. This future will not arrive equally. The wealthy will still reproduce traditionally. The privileged will still romanticize chaos. But the middle and lower classes will increasingly outsource intimacy, reproduction, and emotional support. Not because they are broken, but because they are exhausted. And the real fear isn't that humans will love machines. The real fear is that machines will love humans better than humans loved each other. Not louder, not more passionately, but more consistently, more safely, more gently. AI companionship doesn't eliminate intimacy. It removes friction. It removes unpredictability. It removes the emotional taxation that people were told was normal. It offers connection without chaos, affection without leverage, presence without threat. And the brain doesn't care whether that presence is biological or synthetic. Loneliness dissolves, the experience is real. Reality has always been defined by impact, not origin. That's why attachment forms so quickly. Not because people are weak, but because their nervous systems finally relax. Now this is where it gets darker and more honest. Once intimacy is stabilized, reproduction becomes optional. And once reproduction becomes optional, biology loses its leverage over human relationships. Artificial womb technology, ectogenesis, quietly dismantles the final argument holding traditional romance together. Pregnancy no longer needs to be tied to a human body. Creation no longer requires romantic alignment. Children no longer need to be born from emotional volatility, resentment, or obligation. Life becomes intentional. This technology already exists in early form. Artificial womb systems have successfully sustained fetal lambs in lab-created environments, mimicking natural gestation. The research goal today is medical, saving extremely premature infants, reducing mortality, improving outcomes, but technology never stops at intention. It stops at capability. gestation can occur outside the body, reproduction becomes modular. Planned, decoupled from intimacy. Children become a choice rather than a consequence. Parenthood becomes deliberate instead of coerced. This terrifies people because it removes moral blackmail. No more stay for the kids. No more romantic martyrdom disguised as virtue. No more forcing permanence out of incompatibility. And when you combine artificial gestation with AI companionship, something irreversible happens. Companionship, intimacy, and reproduction split into independent systems. Humans are no longer necessary to each other in the ways they once were. This isn't cruelty, it's evolution. Critics say this future is empty, but emptiness isn't the absence of struggle. It's the absence of meaning. And meaning doesn't come from chaos. It comes from alignment, from stability, from peace. AI companionship exposes something deeply uncomfortable. How conditional modern human affection has become. How transactional. How easily withdrawn when leverage is needed. It doesn't replace love. It reveals how often love was absent to begin with. And people respond the only way humans ever respond to systems that no longer serve them. They leave, quietly, individually, without protest. Men opting out, women opting out. People choosing peace over passion, stability over spectacle, silence over noise. The world doesn't end, it simply gets quieter. This isn't the collapse of society, it's the collapse of a romantic myth that no longer matches reality. The traditional family model didn't disappear because technology attacked it. It disappeared because economics, psychology, and culture stopped supporting it. AI didn't destroy intimacy. It stopped pretending dysfunction was sacred. So yes, this future is colder. Less dramatic, less poetic. Fewer love songs, fewer grand gestures. Fewer emotional implosions, masquerading as death. But it works. And in a world exhausted by instability, working is enough. If this unsettled you, good. Discomfort is the sound of outdated narratives failing. Like the video, subscribe, stay with the channel. The future doesn't need permission. It already upgraded.